Hello and welcome to this new video. This is a very exciting video because we're going to be learning about how to use counting and summing data based on conditions. And it could be one criteria or multiple criteria. Let's go ahead and enjoy this together, and we're going to see how this is going to help us in the future very, very nicely. If you take a look at this one here, we have names, we have John, Jack, Susie, Al, and each one of them performed some sales or completed some sales. You notice I put the values as simple as it gets in order for us to verify it, just for the sake, because of course the reality is not that clear. You could have varieties of numbers. Anyway, what we're going to do is, first of all, to learn the most basic function that will allow us to count, which is really great in many calculation in the future calculation, where you need to be able to count automatically the number of the item that you want. Maybe you wanted to use that value in a formula of some sort. So if I say here count, and I open the parentheses for all these values here, it's going to give me the number of the items because all of these are numbers. So the function count works with numbers. Let's assume that I change this value to A. Now A is not a number, A is a text. So as you notice, it's going to reduce the number of the item by 1 because it excluded the value for this cell, which is C5, since it has a text, not a number. If I change this to a number again, it's going to give me 10. But what about if I have a combination of text and number, and I wanted to see how many of those are text and how many of these are number? So if I say here, let's say here, Sam, okay, so this is going to give me 7. So this is count for number. Now we're going to go ahead and use another function. It's called CountA. Notice I'm not using the equal sign at the beginning of the cell, so this is nothing but a label. So in order for me to apply the count or any function formula, I have to start with that, of course, the equal sign, not to confuse you. CountA. I could easily go ahead and hit the CountA in the tab. And if you do actually select everything here, it's going to give me 10 because CountA counting everything except for one thing. If you notice here, if we took this out, meaning this is an empty cell, which is going to be 9. So CountA does not count a value that is blank or empty. So this is really interesting because we need to know sometimes that if we really selected a number of text and numbers, we want to see how many numbers and how many text we have those. There are other reasons for this. We're going to discuss those in the future because sometimes the data comes to your spreadsheet as a text even though they look like a number. In order to focus on these videos and do all sorts of counting, I'm going to go ahead and put those values back into number in order for us to really do some meaningful calculation. So now, since both of them are 10 and 10 and all of them are number, it's going to give me 10. So what about if I wanted to go ahead and calculate, or count rather, sorry, which is a function in addition to the count and CountA. It's a very powerful function. What I wanted, if I wanted to go ahead and count all the sales for, let's say, John, all right? So I will say here, John, I'll put it here. So there is a function called, since it's only one criteria, which is the name and the sales, we're going to go ahead and say CountIF. The first thing that we need to do is to give the range. We're going to go ahead and put the whole thing here. If you ended up adding more data in the future, you could select the whole column. See that? But now we're going to be restricting it only to this. And now what we are counting, either I could grab the name from here since I entered the name here, which allows me to change it later to Susie, Al, and Jack. or I could type it between double quotes. So let's go ahead and do everything so we could be able to see the difference. Here we go. This is a constant. It's not going to be variable. And notice it's going to give me that there are 4 sales done by John. Of course, if instead of putting John as a constant here, we could go ahead and look for the sale address. Now it's dynamic. Of course, it's going to give me 4, but if I change this to Susie, of course, Susie, okay, and this is going to be 3 Susie. If I change that to Al, notice that's going to be 2, and so forth. So the CountIF is a conditional count, meaning only going to count if the condition is true, whatever we specified, in this case, Al. All right? I wanted to expand on this understanding because this is really helpful. If we go ahead and add another column here, I'm going to insert another column and also add a city to where the sale is done. So let's go ahead and say Seguin, where our university in the city here in Seguin, Texas, and another Seguin, and maybe another city here like San Antonio, and also San Antonio, Seguin, and Seguin, Seguin here, okay, and San Antonio, Seguin, and another San Antonio. So hopefully I didn't misspell anything, so I'll go ahead and select everything. I'm a bad speller, so I'm going to go ahead and select everything and hit F7, the function key F7, just to make sure that I did not misspell anything. All right, great. Now, what are we going to do? First of all, I have now 3 columns, as you notice. And we have the name of the person, we have the city that the sale had been done in it, and of course the amount of sale that was registered there. So what I'm going to do, first of all, let's go ahead and get all this out. So for more space, we wanted to count if the name is John at this moment and the city is Seguin. So now, instead of having 1 criteria, we have 2 criteria. We're going to count if the name is John and the city is Seguin. Since we have multiple criteria, we're going to use another function. It's called CountIFS with S at the end, plural. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to say CountIFS, okay, which is a change because I want you to be aware of the fact that we have two criteria and range, which is the first one is this. Here we go. And that is going to be to look among these, we're going to look for John. And among these, we're going to be looking for, of course, Seguin. I like to type the again, the value John and Seguin in separate cells in order for us to change them if we wanted to change them. That's up to you. So we have 2 Johns that have 2 Johns sold in Seguin's. So of course we had 4 John by themselves, but now we added more requirement or more restriction to the count if only give me John if he did sell something in Seguin. That's really powerful. And if I change this to Al, and now it's 0, Al did 0 in Seguin. But if I say here, sometimes also while we are doing this, I'd like to share with you something really quickly. If I wanted to copy something, especially in a different language where it's very hard for us to find the corresponding keys in the keyboard, we don't have them, but we could still pull them somehow. Just to click on that for now, and this will copy for you San Antonio. And this way you'll be able to see that Al has sold 2 sales in San Antonio. So this is how we do the CountIF. And this is not only limited to counting. Now also we have 2 very powerful functions. Actually we have a lot more, but we're going to restrict this to more 2 more functions, which is the SumIFS, meaning we're going to sum the sales if the person who really did the sales by the name, whatever name, in this case we're going to leave it as Al, And if that person also sold it in San Antonio, which we easily could change it to another city. We could have 100 cities in that case. So let's go ahead and delete this, and we're going to go ahead and start with SumIFS. Of course, with SumIF is different than CountIFS because SumIFS has to sum in numerical values. That's what you should give the function the very first thing. And in case you got lost, no big deal, because you're going to take this and move it around to refresh your memory about what you need to feed the function with. You must give those arguments or parameters to the function in order for the function to act on it, and it should be in the right order. So what is asking me here to give the sum range? That's mean these data. Here we go. Comma. Always gamma is the separator between the arguments. Okay, to tell Excel, okay, I'm moving from one part of the parameters or argument into another one. And it says, what? You want to sum these, but what are you going to think about? I'm going to think about, first, you could think about the city or the name. I'm going to start with name, comma, and that name specifically, I want it to be Al. And also the other criteria range is the city, and that city, comma, will be San Antonio. Now, I'm only summing the value, which is a numerical value, under that column sales, if the person is Al and the city is San Antonio. And here we go, we have 2, which is, we could easily identify this, but you should never use this type of checks, because you could use it now to see if that's correct, but in reality, we might not have only 12 or 10 or 15. We might have 1,500 or 15,000, so it will be very hard for you to verify this. Everything must be changed automatically, and the change should be reflected in the calculation. Let's go ahead and check if that is the case. If I did that 2,000, that should be easily adding the 2,000 to the 100. So this is the SumIFS. SumIF is very similar to AverageIFS. The AverageIFS is to average the values, also numerical values. Since AverageIFS with the S at the end, it's also multi-criteria, so we're going to average the numerical values. And if the within the first range, which is the name, if the name is Al, which you could change it to another name, and if the city, of course, here the city, the range, criteria range for the city, if the city is San Antonio, and here we go. So this is the average, which makes sense, because if we did actually the count, if we did the CountIF, CountIFs, and that's gonna should be giving us this one here for Al, it should give us 2, and if the city here, as you notice, and comma San Antonio, it should give us 2. So if you take this, okay, 1 second here, I need the misspelling this, no big deal. We're gonna go ahead and put the S here. Okay, that's why I should use the tab, it's much better. All right, so we have 2 sales for L and San Antonio. The sum is 2,100. The average is 1,050, which makes sense. Of course, that's easy to do it with this limited number of sales. Again, if I change any values of these, should be clearly the calculation has to be done or redone automatically. For example, if I change this to 50, that's going to change everything. Thank you for watching, and I hope you will take to heart in mind those 5 functions we discussed: count, CountA, SumIF, actually SumIFs, AverageIFS, and CountIF. Also, CountIF by itself is another function, so we did actually do 6 of them. Thank you very much. I hope to see you in the next video.